Hello and welcome to the First Class Agers, the podcast for the curious, fun-loving agers. I'm Ido Laufer and with me is Marlene Nix, and today we are very excited to host Dr. Lior Noy. Dr. Noy is a childhood friend of mine. He studies and practices collective creativity and improvisation. He holds a PhD in computer science from the Weizmann Institute with background in cognitive psychology, computational neuroscience, and robotics. He is also a performer and a researcher of movement. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I'm 51. I just went 51, so I'm not sure if I'm younger or old. I wish to
Very
think myself
young.
as a young person. I recently talked with a colleague who lead a department for geriatric studies in a university in Israel, and he told me no one wants to study old people because no one wants to deal with it. So I said, interesting. So I'm super happy to be here and meet. And I know Ido, of course, we know each other for many years, but I particularly interested in the work you do for preventing falling, and brilliant. Yes. So I'm very happy to meet here and to talk about your work and maybe how it's related to research that we are doing. So briefly about myself, I'm very interested in movement. My background is in robotics / computational motor control, which is this branch of neuroscience looking at movement and trying to understand how the brain is producing movement, perceiving movement. And from this, I went into studying how two people are moving together, which was in some lucky shot, a nice intersection with my kind of night wing, which is improvisation. So for many, many years, I'm an actor, I'm teaching improvisation, I performed for many years in improvisation. And in improvisation, we often have this unique moment when people suddenly do something together as if they know what's going on. So this kind of led my research and a lot of my other activities. And one specific point of contact maybe though with your work is our recent works that maybe we can talk about it later, about how people move slowly, in particular when they move together, how and when. So I'm kind of interested in this issue of slow motion in recent years. So I think this was one of the seeds for our discussion.
Okay. And then let me ask you, why are you so interested in movement? From you went to your big learning side is about computation and computer science, and you are integrating it into motion. So can you explain to us how it relates and how do you put them together?
So it's a very personal question in a way, but let me answer first a more professional question. So we move, right? Like things in the world move. There is this stories that you often tell when you teach first course on movement and motor control. There is this small creature, I think it's like a yam, I forget the English name. It's like a very tiny creature that live in the sea, and it has a couple of hundred neurons, the cells in their brain, and they use it to move. At some point, they reach a place. Some points in their graduations, they reach a place on the ocean floor, and then they just rest there. And then what they do with the 300 neurons, they eat it. So they use it as food. And so we tell this as a joke that this is some of the faculties that they get tenure. This is not a bad metaphor, maybe, that you are moving, but then you get tenure. You are eating your brain. Yeah, but more to the point is maybe that probably part of our brain, and maybe a large part, is devoted to us acting in the world, us moving in the world. And I would say, I think in psychology for sure, but probably also in computer science, there is a bit more bias in terms of the scope of studies and scope of courses and scope of discussion to the other side. Other side, I mean the side of perception. So perception is an agent getting information from the world and then understanding something maybe more top level. So I see an image with a lot of pixels and I understand there is a face, and this face is the face of my friend Ido. So this is a perception side. Well, the action side is I want to wave hello to my friend Ido. I have this top level notion, and now I need to convert it to a lot of information that will eventually move all the muscles, hundreds of muscles that are needed, and millions of signals through the spinal cord, etc. And somehow, at least, for example, when I studied psychology, I'm an undergrad in psychology and computer science. We had very little courses, very few courses, sorry, on action and on behavior. And a lot of courses and a lot of studies on perception. And it was the same when I was studying computer science in second degree. And so I think there is a bias there, and I'm often personally intrigued to these spaces which are maybe less populated. So this is more like a general, more professional answer. I think personally, I would argue, and I have zero data, but I have some phenomenological or subjective experience, that scientists often study something that they deeply care, and they often don't understand why they care about it. So for me, scientists are not so different from artists. And, you will find it very natural that an artist will devote his life to study something or to create something based on some spiritual or psychological reasons. For scientists, we have this maybe misconception of the objective side of science. And so scientists will say, yeah, we study this because we want to understand this, we want to solve, cure cancer or solve the global warming, etc., which is totally a valid motivation. I would suggest that for many scientists, there is also another side, which is something very personal, as they choose them to choose this particular field, particular method, particular interest. And over the year, I think I'm realizing that if I look at the different things I'm doing, there is often something there, not only about movement, but about this transition between stillness and motion. So when I did studies on creativity, we were very interested in this moment of change between creating in a known space without moving a lot, and then this point of exploration, going to a new place. And I see this point in different things that I'm writing on, studying. And it's probably connected to a very personal and maybe early experiences that I had. And if we'll go deeper and we'll have time, maybe we can discuss it.
When you are talking about creativity, I'm always talking about curiosity. That in order to have good life, you must be a curious person. Otherwise, you sink into your comfort zone and you do not develop as much as you could. And without developing, our life are becoming very stagnant. And then we become bored, and then we see this. I think this is the reason for the theme of an old person that talks and tells the same stories over and over again. And would you have a thread to take your curiosity with your field of creativity?
I think in the deeper level, for sure, we are in a strong resonance. I mean, first, just in terms of concept, curiosity and creativity are, of course, related. As a somewhat different research field, creativity is a bit more. So we are finding something new or developing something new. Curiosity is more this maybe state of mind that we often associate with kids about, like you said, openness to the world. But they are definitely connected, and the type of creativity I'm interested in is less about problem solving. You have a well-defined problem and you need to solve it, and maybe there is a known solution. Is more what you call open-ended search. So how does, in my case, a scientist find a question? So not an answer, but how does a scientist find a question? How does an improviser know what to do next? So we are very interested in this theme or topic of going into exploration or exploring the unknown. And probably the state of mind you need and in improvisation, we know it quite well, is very childlike. So you need to be very open to things that come in a very playful mood. Everything is good. If you have seen good improvisers, they are often very, very open. I always say good actors in general, very open to anything that happen unexpected. So they're definitely related concept. More deeply, I think what you described, Ido, is this fear of I don't know, stagnation, maybe, which I think maybe for you is more about avoiding it by physical action in the different, arts that you practice for many years, etc. And for me, it's more easy to think about maybe, ideas and stories and freedom in text and intellectual freedom, etc. I mean, for me personally, but I think it's the same thing. So the need to move, right? Like, I mean, it's a very Israeli thing, but think about Ehud Banai. All his song is always like, צריך להמשיך ללכת. You need to keep moving, right? There was something stable, and yeah, I need to move on. I think it's a very deep and ancient motif in human life. Maybe a bit more generic, general reference will be for me David Bowie, the artist who I'm deeply connected to, and I admire him. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago, and I think looking at his career, always you see this tension between finding something, being an excellent in it, and then okay, enough with this. Let's go on. Let's explore something new. Which is just, by the way, just one way to be a creative person. You can also be a very dedicated creative person. Think about Monet, the Impressionist artist, over and over, painting the same garden, the same lily pond, the same water pond that he had. But what's the name? Water lilies in his pond. But I'm very attracted to this kind of artist or scholars, which has this almost unbearable urge to step out. Let's find the next thing. Let's do the next thing. Oh, okay, we've done this. What's next?
Yeah. Lior, I was listening to you, and it makes a heck of a lot of sense, because one thing about aging that personally irritates me all the time is when people say to me, act your age. What are you talking about? Act your age. There's no such thing in my lexicon at all. And you being an actor, you would appreciate, I was very interested in what you were saying, because take a person like Tina Turner. When she jumps around and what she did with her life, I saw her on stage, I said to myself, I feel like doing the same thing. Just let go. And people who are younger and look at the elderly and say, abale, imale, it's an insult. Keep moving, because if you don't, old age is a challenge. You can't look at it as something stagnant. This is the way I feel about it. So you try new things, and that's what keep moving means. Just keep on going. And when I heard about Ido's course, I said, I'd like to do that, because it's something new for me. And everybody sees falling so negatively, but he saw it as an experience, a challenge, and that's why I did it.
Yeah, I totally resonated. And I think I would guess that also when you were young, quote unquote, in your whatever 30s, 40s, or 50s, you were also a person that tried things, that were open and curious. And I know people who were what we called old or stagnant in their 30s. So I think it's definitely, there is like there is a cultural thing that we associate as with young and old, and there is this very personal thing. I mean, we have to admit that kids are quite restless, right? Kids up to, I don't know, 8, 7, 12, they move a lot and they laugh a lot.
I want to share something about movement with you. I had a very interesting experience a month ago University of Bar Ilan, the music school, there's a postdoc student, and I volunteered when he talked about his project. He invited me to come to, I really didn't know what I was getting into, something concerning movement and aging. And there I went. I said, what's this all about? There was a younger woman, maybe 35, 40. And we sat opposite each other on chairs, and he played certain melodies and certain tunes, certain rhythms, and we were to copy what we saw the other person doing or just move. And this took close to an hour we were doing it. I found it fascinating, and I intend to follow up what he found. When I asked him about it, he said it had to do something with aging and movement and using music to analyze it. So I connected up with what you were saying immediately, and I bring it back to these falling experiences I had when I first met Ido. We did left, we did right, we did standing up, and the fear of falling was translated into movement. At the beginning, I didn't understand what he was talking about, soft impact. How can it be soft if I'm going to fall? I'll be tense, and that is the opposite for me. But if you just move with it, it's such a different story. It's so encouraging to see the way I felt after doing his course. Much more secure now.
I think
it just came to me from what you said, Marlene, that it relates together. Lior is talking about keep moving, keep on doing, keep living, because movement is life. If you are dead, so you don't move. And then you connected two dots for me, that now it's also with the falling. If you want to stop it, if you want to freeze, you're more likely to get hurt. But if you keep moving the fall, moving with the fall, if you can keep living the fall, not trying to avoid the life, but let's say that a fall is a movement or a life of itself. So if you keep the life of the fall and you live with it and you move with it, you will be okay.
Yeah.
And to close the circle another notch, it happened often, when we talk, that I see this strong resonance between what we do in improvisation teaching and what you do with the falling. In improvisation, which is not so much physical, it's more about social, kind of emotional falling. We often have this moment of utter failure, and one thing, and it's in front of the audience, and can be very unnerving. And one thing we teach ourselves and we teach our students is, like you said, just be with it. Just, like clowns, I think, is a good example. I often, when I teach improvisation in the beginning, I refer to clowns. Clowns, they have this thing, right? They fall, but then they go like, ta-da! And they have this, it's like, great, did I just crush and totally broke my foot? Look at me. And kids are just the same. Like, right, kids, when they are small, like 3, 4, or start walking even younger, they just, and I think there's like a clownish attitude that we try to cultivate in improvisation. The way you described the falling seemed very, very similar. And the fact that you do it with, again, quote unquote, elderly people is so nice, because we do have this notion that elderly are, are brittle, are not moving, all this. Really, really nice.
It's true.
I think it's I think that the image we, the younger people, have about being old is somewhat wrong. because an old person is the same person as a young person. He has the same mind, he has the same thoughts, he has the same cravings, only that it's like being trapped in an old body. These are young people that being younger, as you said, everybody has a friend who's already old at the age of 30. But the young people at the age of 30 will be the young people at the age of 80, 90, and 100. The only thing is that they will be entrapped in an old person body. And then how do you act in an old person body, which is not the body that you had most of your life?
That is so true, Lido, because speaking personally, what is the most frustrating feeling is if you have pain when you never had pain in a certain part of your body, and you're now being restricted in some way. I've seen your examples of, and you talked about this with the Newsweek letters, a person, whether they've hurt their knee or their hips and their movement is restricted, then suddenly you realize, wow, I was feeling so different maybe a year ago or even 6 weeks ago, and suddenly I have something new to deal with. And when you're confronted with this, I know, again, I use myself as an example. I try to find a new way to do something that it was so easy to do before. And this new way, it also has to do with improvising. You can use, I think I once made Ido laugh because he said—
More than once you made me laugh.
Picture yourself like the horses who are prancing. We were talking about Tai Chi. And I went out to the park the next day when I was walking, and a woman stopped me and she said, "What are you doing?"
Act your age.
Act your age. I was listening to the YouTube of the horses in Vienna as they prance, and I was doing it. She said, well, she must be some kooky old lady, you know, let her do what she's doing. I was having a good time, but my muscles relaxed and I felt more confident walking. And this was the point he brought out in the lesson. You see old people stooping, looking down, and it's so bad. Look around you, be confident, stand up straight. Makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, two quick comments to your nice vignette, nice description is, I think you said now about what I heard is kind of mimicking the horses in Vienna, and then you said before imitating or mirroring the person in Bar Ilan, in the music workshop. And this is what I study in a way, still studying for, now it's like maybe 15 years almost, or 30 years that we study mirroring in motion. And mirroring is a very strong way of allowing people to step out of their pattern. So when you were doing this exercise with a person, or when you were imagining the horses, suddenly your body is moving in a way maybe you're not so used to. And so we do a lot of studies about how people mirror each other, and this is a way of understanding togetherness and synchronization. And when we talk about it, we see mirroring is used in so many different practices, in all kind of movement therapy, working with people on the autistic spectrum, of course in things like Tai Chi, etc. And just in theater, just the act of moving with someone else, when they are leading or you are leading or you are both leading and following together, there is something very liberating with it. And I think in particular in this field that we are now exposing, which sometimes we tend to be more stagnant and frozen. So there is actually a study of a colleague of mine, Dr. Julia Guland from Weizmann, that continues the work we did on the mirroring and work with elderly people in elderly בית זקנים, איך אומרים? בית אבות?
Home care.
Home care.
היום קוראים לזה דיור מוגן.
דיור מוגן, protected custody.
Some protection, yeah.
And they just brought people and asked them to do this game when they mirror each other and they switch leadership and then they move together even without music, and compared it to some other physical therapy, and people really loved it and said they feel more free and younger, etc. So I'm kind of interested in this mirroring of movement because I'm studying it for many years, but somehow in both of your stories I heard it, so I just want to highlight.
If you want to have fun, it happened to me this morning. Every day I like to do exercise at home, watching it from the YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the American one, Silver Sneakers.
Yeah.
And she was doing something. She was going left, I was going right. And suddenly I saw myself flinging my hands into the air, my arms into the air. And I said, well, I can't keep up with this. This is ridiculous. So I started doing my own. And then she asked, how are you feeling now? And I said to myself, like an idiot, I couldn't even keep up with the coordinating that she was doing, but I was having a great time. I said, tomorrow I'm going to meet the challenge. I'm going to really try and stay in the same direction. Let's see what happens. And this mirroring is a great idea because it gives you incentive. Definitely.
And in particular, when you also are part of the action, so you're not only following someone else, but sometimes you're also leading, and sometimes you are doing it together. And
Exactly.
I remember many years ago, though maybe you know him, what's the guy? He used to be a professor for business school. I forgot his name now. It will come to me. And he had Parkinson, and then he developed this technique of working on his body via dancing, and he worked with a lot of kind of known dance teachers in Israel, and they opened few clubs. They have a club in Ramat Hasharon actually, when people with Parkinson are basically learn to dance. And I came once to do a workshop with them, and when you look at what they do, a lot of what they do is mirroring. So you have the dance teacher and the other person, and they mirror each other, and it's great. I mean, one thing is just help you maybe to get into this motion and maybe not think about it too much. But the second thing is also this very strong connection that is created when two people are moving together as if they are one.
I think that now that most of my teachings is online, either in the Zoom lesson or the courses that I provide, which is videos, it is only mirroring. There's nothing else. I cannot touch, I cannot lead. It's only about look at what I'm doing, do it carefully, do it slowly, and you will succeed. It's only about mirroring. And I think you can tell us about that. I'm sure you can talk about mirroring as the first thing that babies do when they start walking. I guess that there's much material about it.
Yeah, there is actually studies that babies, studies from the 70s, do imitation, mirroring of facial gestures when they're a couple of hours old. So, you come to a few hours old baby and you do this and they will smile, or you do this and they will do the same, which is kind of amazing because in a lot of the mirroring, so let's say you're teaching me Tai Chi and I see your hand and I see my hand, so we kind of match it computationally. I can match a hand to hand if you're standing, let's say, with the back to me, which I guess you do often. But when we do the facial imitation, I don't see my own face, right, unless we have a mirror. So somehow I need to do this quite complicated mapping of what you do, which I perceive in my eyes, to the feeling that I have of activating my muscles, and somehow babies know to know it. So we can speculate. Maybe there is some evolutionary advantage of smiling to a caregiver, etc., etc. But there is a lot of work, a lot of studies about imitation, and part of it is this online imitation, which we call mirroring. It's a very powerful learning technique. Advanced animals like apes, a chimpanzee, etc., or dolphins can teach each other through imitation. For example, they have sophisticated ways of putting like a thread, like a thin branch. How would you say it in English?
A twig, the thin.
A twig.
Yeah.
I was with you. So a twig to a termite's mound, but you need to do it very, very carefully. It takes like a couple of years basically to learn it. So because you need to put the twig into the mound and the termites go on it, and then you need to take it out not too fast because otherwise it will fall. And some chimpanzee, if I'm not mistaken, have developed this technique, and then there is studies showing how they teach their infants to do it, and they use a lot of this learning by demonstration. So look at how I'm doing, and you do it now, and let's do it together, and I will correct it a bit. So it is a very strong learning mechanism. I studied more on this kind of affinity creating mechanism, that we do things together. Think about, in many cultures, we dance together, we sing together. We sometimes it also has negative uses, like think of marching. Everyone are going together. And so armies discovered it around, I think, 2,000 years ago, this joint marching, which create unit cohesion or feeling of I'm part of the group, I'm competent. So this not only necessarily done for good. We are trying to study this moment of people feeling together that can help their well-being, creativity, etc.
Would you have the question, would you have, when we're doing a class over Zoom, so the togetherness, everybody's by himself in his own room, in his own home, and there is a group on the Zoom. So actually he's by himself, and he has to visualize the whole group and visualize himself as part of this group, even though he's all alone in his home. And I think that togetherness is a very powerful thing in order to, when you belong to the group, so it will give you a lot of energy, and it will give you the momentum to keep on and persist in the training. Could you think about how I can increase the sense of togetherness within a Zoom course, a Zoom lesson?
Yeah, I can tell you who to talk with. There is a colleague of mine, Michal Rinot in Shenkar, that she's doing a lot of studies in recent years of how bringing what we found about synchronization, which lead to togetherness in physical world into the digital world. So maybe creating an app that we are doing something together, and if we are moving together, you see some other feedback. I mean, I'm sure you can get some of it. People report on togetherness also sometimes when they speak on the phone, when they have this feeling of affinity. So you don't have to have physical presence. I'm a big believer of what you call embodiment and physical presence. So my short answer will be non-feasible probably, but bring the people to a physical space, at least once in a while, if you can. Maybe if you cannot bring everyone, maybe you can bring a couple. So I was teaching a lot, of course, in COVID. I'm teaching in a college, and I was teaching a lot. And at some point, people started creating this learning unit. So you would have 2-3 people together sitting in a living room and having the class. And they had such a better experience than someone sitting alone. I guess I'm trying to say, in order to have this physical presence, you don't have to have 100 people or whatever, 10 people you have in your course. It will be nice to have another person. But if you don't have it and people are far away and it have to be via Zoom, yeah, maybe some technique like trying to really bring people to some breathing together, counting together, passing something. So there was some time in Corona that we did some improvisation, try to do some improvisation in Zoom, and then try to do things like you put the windows in the Zoom and try to pass something, So you can be very playful in this. But and actually there is some study. I was interviewed a few years ago. I can send you some books. There was a group in Stanford that are interested in design of rituals, and then because of COVID or maybe other things, they started thinking about designing ritual in digital world, and for corporates, etc., how to create togetherness, and we talked a bit, and I think they have a book about some ideas. So there is some practical. These people are interested in this question of how to create togetherness in a digital space. But yeah, it's a big. I mean, maybe it's even a technical thing, right? Like instead of seeing just you, maybe have another screen. Again, I'm brainstorming, speculating. Another screen when you can see other people. It need to be, I think, well matched to real world. So I'm a bit skeptical of this metaverse and this. If you need to have a sense that it's very organic to your body. One way, I have a colleague in France, Asaf Bachrach, who did a lot of work in virtual reality in a reduced form. So they did some work, like an exhibition they showed in the Tate, where they put on a person, they represented a moving person as 3 dots. So 1 dot, 2nd dot, 3rd dot. So you record the motion, but instead of presenting an avatar, which might look a bit awkward, you just show 3 dots in the virtual space. Then you go into a virtual space when you see your own dots, maybe there is a virtual mirror, and then someone else joins. And then you can mirror each other or dance or ignore or do things that you cannot do in real world, like crossing each other. And then this seems like a very strong experience because it seems organic. So you're moving and then you see your dot moving and everything fits. But when you, at least in current technology, when you do the avatars and virtual reality, it's often look very, awkward, clunky. So I'm not sure technically how would you do it. Maybe through sound. There is a lot of work now about trying to develop devices when people can play together or play an instrument together. I have a colleague in Vienna that have a big research grant about this. Because there is issues of delay, etc., etc. But basically, when we are in an audience, in a live concert, and we clap together, and we go to this pattern of clapping, depending on culture, etc., we probably feel some connection, right? Why do we go to cinema, right? It's nice to hear other people laugh, or they are, oh, what's this? I guess some of it you can get in Zoom, but you probably need to cultivate it or to structure it.
I think as I'm doing movements and falling, so I think we can do the breathing together, which I think it's good. And you gave me things to think about, how to improve my online lessons in order to have more people feeling engaged with other people. So
one trick that I would strongly recommend, we did an improvisation class I did with colleague Shir Mautner, who is an improvisation teacher, during COVID, and we had 60 people, and then how do you create cohesiveness and togetherness? And we came to this quite banal trick, which is not creating cohesiveness in the group, but connecting 2 people. So for example, in the Zoom, you can ask a person, you need to work about it to match 2 people together, and then close all the windows of the others, and then you have just one window of another person. And then you can give them some very simple tasks. So task we gave them, for example, was we put some music. Music is a good, like Merlin said, is a good connector. So we put some music, and then you said the only thing that you can do with the music is move forward and backward. And you need to do it together. When you do improvisation, it's often good to start with very small or safe and structured exercise. If you tell people you can do whatever you want, it's a bit chaotic. But just moving, and then people can for 1 or 2 minutes like just enjoy the music and do. I think this often, when it works well, create a good feeling of connectedness. The problem is that it needs to be a bit structured, because if you have someone who is a bit cynical or is not feeling comfortable maybe about movement or shy, so you need to really to scale it up. But it's definitely something I would try to create some joint experience, not necessarily for the whole group, and definitely not the whole group via the trainer, but working as couples. Yeah, even the silly thing of taking people to a Zoom room and in groups of 3 or 4 and share, let them some very simple question, even just tell about themselves, and something which is not threatening, maybe not your age or your profession, but maybe something like, I don't know.
You gave me some good ideas. I'll test them.
Yeah, sure. Test them, exactly.
I don't think that dividing into
maybe not
separate rooms would work, but I think I have some ideas that I'll experiment. I'll let you know what's going on.
Sure. It's good. Yeah. You need to align it. You have a very specific context and you need to align it. But there's definitely a way to do it, and the trick is to try, and also to be very sensitive to what is comfortable for people.
Okay, well, I think we're about to reach our time limit.
Okay.
And would you have any recommendation about if you know how to teach movements that you've been searching? What would be in the mirroring, how to make it, or other techniques in order to teach better other people how to move?
Yeah, I think I'm not. I'm a researcher of movement in a very particular branch and how people mirror each other. And as a practitioner, I'm more an expert in improvisation, in acting. I would totally not give advice of how to teach people how to move. You probably know much more than me, but I would tell you who is a good person to ask. So I mentioned my friend Asaf Bachrach, who is one of the leading contact improvisation teacher in the world. He was a student of Steve Paxton, who invented contact improvisation. Contact improvisation, this movement together where there is always a contact. And I think this field of contact improvisation, they are experts in cultivating movement, joint movement, helping people who are not so fluent and secure go into a space of including falling and trusting each other. So this is, I think, kind of the expertise that you need to look at.
Okay. Marlene, do you have any more questions or something to say?
I found this was very interesting because it makes you think of what did you feel when you were first introduced to the idea of falling. Like I say again, curiosity was one thing, but when I experienced the first time, I remember when you said to me, it was, I called it my eureka movement. And it was a moment of, wow, I really did it. I was trying to move forward you said, raise your legs. I'd heard it and heard it and heard it, tried, was frustrated. And all of a sudden I flipped up in the air and you said, you did it. And it's when you said you did it, that same afternoon, I tried it on my own and I did it again. And I did it again. And I said, okay, what's next? Those special, and you're very good at this because you tell, during the lesson, you encouraged people. You did it very well. First time, great, continue. I think we continue doing that because it makes other people feel, I can do it if I persist. It's very encouraging. It's one of the better things about your course is that you give a lot of encouragement.
Thank you so much. Okay, Lior, I think we can wrap it up.
Sure. Was super interesting.
We covered, I think the line of thoughts here is very, very large. We've covered a lot of fields from a lot of, so I need
welcome to my world. yeah.
So I will need to listen to it again and see because we covered a lot of things that needs.
And feel free, Ido. We can. I also felt it was a very introductory, and we opened a lot of branches, and it was very. It moved, right? It flowed. The conversation flowed. But if you want to have a follow up on a particular topic, and I also mentioned a few people that maybe you want to talk with them, I can connect you to. But definitely we can do a follow up on a particular thing if you're interested.
Lovely. So thank you very much, Lior.
Sure.
Marlene, thank you so much again.
I was delighted to be here. Thank you very much, Lior. I think that your experiences you're so young, you have so much more to do. And he say,
Yeah,
this
now I'm
was a
happy. This was a
beginning.
good, okay, this was a good
It
ending.
was a beginning to follow through on. There's so much more to do,
I agree.
because keep moving and keep the elderly moving. It's so pitiful to see people saying, I can't because I'm old.
Yeah.
Just the opposite. If we say you're supposed to be wiser when you're older, I don't know about that. But if you look at it from your point of view, the improvising, there was a lot of good in the Fred Astaire days. That man moved beautifully. And if we can encourage older people to move away from the, I can't do it, I'm too old, or it hurts, just get people involved through people like Ido, but people like you who discover new ways. You call it improvising. I think it definitely is, because you compensate and you improvise and you come out with something new. So I thank you. It was very enlightening for me to hear from your point of view, because I'm
Thanks.
more or less attuned to what Ido says and how he does it. And I'm going to think of new ways that he can introduce new ideas of his. So it was a very profitable meeting in all ways. Thank you.
And just maybe a final comment to what you said, and I thought about it on your first comment, and just maybe I can close with now, that at least in the improvisation, and I guess with the movement also, actually often it's very hard with people who in their 30s, 40s, because they are, you know, very busy and they already have a lot of pattern, and I can do this and I don't want to make fool of myself still. And I think maybe for elderly people, first, maybe they have more flexibility, maybe less responsibility. Kids are grown up, maybe financial stability, whatever, for some of them, hopefully. And second thing, they're fucking old. They shouldn't give a fuck, you know? They can fall, they can be foolish. Anyhow, the population thinks you old people are all fools, right? Old fools. So you can actually be
Act
foolish.
foolish.
Yeah, so
Because
act
they
your
think
age.
you are.
Don't give a fuck. And then I would say, forgive my French. No, and actually there is a potential liberation, a potential of a liberation, I think, in this age. You can really do. You can improvise, you can move to places, you can invent yourself. Not everyone doing it. And of course there is health issue and financial issues and kids, and there is a lot of constraints, but maybe there is also some hope of flexibility and freedom in old age that we don't necessarily think about. So
well, that's another subject about ageism, which I don't want to bring out the negatives today, because you've been very positive about everything. What you're saying is true. At this age, that's the answer. What can you do? What will you do? How you do it is your business.
yeah, nice.
That's for sure.
Let's keep in touch. Really, I'm super interested in this endeavor, and it's related to research also. So let's just keep in touch. Very, very interesting. Thanks so much for your input.
Yes.
So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for being with us in the First Class Agers. Join us for the next episode.